It didn't happen in history. It didn't happen in history. It didn't happen in history. No, it didn't happen in history. Well, history is full of lies, depending on the messenger. It's meant to keep you locked inside the feelings of the publisher. Columbus was the first to find this land we say is so divine. The bows and arrows couldn't endure the cannons of the conquerors. I actually have studied the media. I've tons of media books here, and I've studied media owners. I've studied like the whole history of the TV networks. So, YouTube has taken over as far as like promoting pop culture icons. So mainstream media is still very influential. I'm talking about the big TV networks and big publications like New York Times, LA Times, Washington Post, USA Today, the Reuters, all that stuff is massive compared to, say, like my websites. So I want to talk about the gurus who rise up in these markets and actually trick people and get them to be their followers. And sometimes it's not a good idea. Not every guru is going to lead you to hell, but a bunch of them, if you take gurus seriously, like a religious cult leader, you know, that's what Billy Graham was. I went and saw him one time at Cal Expo, and yeah, he used propaganda to sway and win the crowd. That's how it works. Propaganda. It dates back many centuries. It started in religious institutions. Propaganda was the means of propagating faith of that religion. So I've been really fascinated not with religion, but with propaganda and how it tricks people and how it runs society. No, the stock market is a whole different world than the normal pop culture world, and it's important to know that if you want to be like me and play with stocks. I love playing with stocks, buying and selling them. I'm a swing trader. That means I'll buy one day and sell another day. I am not a long-term holder because I don't believe in stocks. I think they're yo-yos on purpose, that Wall Street plays games with investors, and 90% of those in the market are the Wall Street honchos, the big elites, so they control the market. Now, Elon Musk was in the news recently, his event called the Robotaxi event, where he was supposed to discuss this long awaited thing that he's been, dangling the carrot for his investors to bite off of, because they want to know what he's got going on in the future.
The solution that we have is AI and vision. So there's no expensive equipment needed. So the Model 3 and Model Y and S and X that we make today will be capable of full autonomy unsupervised. And that means that our cost of producing the vehicle is low. The AI inference computer, it all actually applies to a humanoid robot. It's the same techniques. It's just a robot with arms and legs instead of a robot with wheels. And I think this will be the biggest product ever of any kind. Yeah.
And he loves to pretend that the future is not far away and that what he's working on is going to change everything, and that, he tries to gain that credibility and momentum through what I think is exaggeration and playing upon people's ignorance about science and technology. He himself has no engineering degree. He's got a BA in like I have a BA in communications or something like that. Okay, I can't use that to become a rocket scientist, but somehow he was able to use his credentials to become the CEO of SpaceX. And the way he did that was through just by being an investor, by starting off with a big pile of cash that he made from earlier investments. And so NASA is who funded SpaceX and his dream to colonize Mars. I think that's a bit extreme. I don't think we're going to see that in our lifetime. I think he actually fools people into thinking that's going to happen. But he's a talented orator and creator and curator is what I meant to say. Curator of events, although he's stumbled in his last 5 or 6 events. He's the purpose of doing these public events to showcase a new product or whatever's coming up is to one, pose as a guru. That's always the case these days. Ever since Steve Jobs, he was the first of these CEO gurus. Bill Gates kind of tried to be one, but he was kind of a bland, more business-like man, of the traditional business-like man type, whatever. He was born elite, born rich and connected, whereas Steve Jobs was more like born middle class and wound up with, hanging out with the right people to where he just stair-stepped into the investment world. That's what it's about, the investment world. When CEOs get to be head of a company and they have no credentials to back it up. That's been true, with financial people, medical people. The head of Pfizer, the big vaccine maker. They're more of a drug maker, though. He has no medical degree. I think he has a degree as a veterinarian or something like that. Anyway, it doesn't matter in the Wall Street world where you came from, as long as you play by Wall Street's rules. And Wall Street has a bunch of rules that CEOs all tend to fall in line with. Steve Jobs was very good at it, of meeting those Wall Street expectations. Bill Gates, not as good, but in the long run, Bill Gates, became richer, probably because he's greedier. But Apple ended up becoming a bigger company than Microsoft. And that's partly because of Steve Jobs and the way he curated events. He was able to, it's not about consumers, these events I'm talking about. It's more like investors. The idea is to get investors to pour money into your stock so the stock goes up. Steve Jobs was very good at that. Unless you know that he's the guy who helped make that stock skyrocket, you don't know much about him. Okay, whatever garbage is poured into your head about him, he was a horrible leader as far as employer, for employees. So I wouldn't give him credit for that. But he surrounded himself with brilliant thinkers who, like him, could envision better products for society. That's what he was. He wasn't a techie. He was a guru, but a lot of people confused him and Gates as techies when neither of them had engineering degrees or technology degrees or computer science degrees. Neither of them knew a lot about it. Gates is probably a little better at programming stuff. Jobs was not really a programmer. He was more like he understood technology enough to know how to market it and what was missing in the market. And that's the whole goal of a CEO, to find holes in the market and fill them so that you can attract money from investors. That's what it's about, okay, in the investment world, is CEOs raising capital. Now, just because Elon Musk is the richest man in the world at the moment, that's because he has several different investments and a lot of money he can thank the government for, because they provided him with billions of dollars in subsidies for both SpaceX and Tesla. Well, why was Steve Jobs such a good guru? Because he focused on the products that he was releasing in the near future. He wasn't talking about the distant future like Elon Musk does. So if I'm comparing the two gurus, and keep in mind they both had the same reason for doing what they were doing, which is to attract investors. Okay, they did it through media events, and Bill Gates too, except he wasn't that good at it. Steve Jobs just always was hitting the ball out of the ballpark with his events, because he came off as very compelling. Plus, he was very detailed about his products. Not all of it worked the way he said it was going to work, but most of it was better than what his competitors were putting out.
We're going to reinvent the phone. Now, we're going to start with a revolutionary user interface. It is the result of years of research and development, and of course it's an interplay of hardware and software. Now, why do we need a revolutionary user interface? I mean, here's 4 smartphones, right? Motorola Q, the BlackBerry, Palm Treo, Nokia E62, the usual suspects. And what's wrong with their user interfaces? Well, the problem with them is really sort of in the bottom 40 there. It's this stuff right here. They all have these keyboards that are there whether you need them or not to be there. So how are we going to take this to a mobile device? Well, what we're going to do is get rid of all these buttons and just make a giant screen. A giant screen. Now, how are we going to communicate this? We don't want to carry around a mouse, right? So what are we going to do? Oh, a stylus, right? We're going to use a stylus. No. Who wants a stylus? You have to get them and put them away and you lose them. Yuck. Nobody wants a stylus. So let's not use a stylus. We're going to use the best pointing device in the world. We're going to use a pointing device that we're all born with. We're born with 10 of them. We're going to use our fingers. We're going to touch this with our fingers. And we have invented a new technology called multi-touch, which is phenomenal. It works like magic. You don't need a stylus. It's far more accurate than any touch display that's ever been shipped. It ignores unintended touches. It's super smart. You can do multi-finger gestures on it. And boy, have we patented it.
And the Mac OS 10 operating system, that blew away what Windows had out at the time, to the point where Windows had to copy Mac OS 10 with XP was finally a good seamless operating system for Windows. So anyway, I've been following not just the tech companies, but a bunch of corporations in a bunch of market sectors now for over a few decades. And I've really enjoyed studying the broad market of things. It started with radio. You know, I wanted to know why radio was getting so corporate, and that was ruining radio, because not everything works as corporate. Tech companies, yeah, definitely, because tech companies don't do stupid things like radio stations do. They don't limit their market by demographics. What if Apple only marketed to teens? Wouldn't that be... They wouldn't be the #1 company in the world right now. So anyway, the music industry's lost. It's been floundering now for 20 years, while the tech industry's been thriving and has overshadowed the music industry. And a lot of the reason why the music industry still exists today is because it was saved by the tech giants like Apple. And so it's really what it's all about, is trying to paint the big picture that, hey, I could do no wrong. What I do, I'm the Pied Piper. I'm leading people into the promised land. Music biz used to do that. Like in the 60s, the Beatles were like that. The Beatles were able to lead a whole market their way, and they followed the Beatles wherever they went. They kept moving in and out of different genres and, you know, experimenting with different sounds, and the market went with it. That's why they were gurus. They were very good at their art. And they weren't, I don't think they were trying to fool anybody. The in music, it's hard to fool people because people have a deep sense of what they love. Okay, not just what they like, but what they love. And you can't fool people with cookie cutter mechanical music that's just thrown together to try to mimic a trend just to fit in. That's not what the Beatles did. They actually believed in what they were crafting and wanted to make unique art. So that is almost like Steve Jobs. He was very influenced by the Beatles more than any other CEO probably. He was probably the first big hippie CEO, a guy who quoted, the Beatles and Bob Dylan as part of his inspiration of how he built that company.
My model of business is the Beatles. They were four very talented guys who kept each other's kind of negative tendencies in check. They balanced each other, and the sum was greater than the total was greater than the sum of the parts. And that's how I see business. Great things in business are never done by one person. They're done by a team of people, and we've got that here at Pixar. And we've got that at Apple as well.
And so I think that's why he was an effective guru. You can say whatever you want about whether you love him or hate him, but he was effective at skyrocketing Apple stock. Unlike Elon Musk, who for a while actually was effective and very good at it, but he started running into trouble once Tesla got pretty big and famous and happening. You'll recall his stock initially wasn't that. It was under $100 in the beginning, and it was more like $20. And one day Sarah Palin in 2008 laughed at Tesla, how she injected Republican politics into the thing that caused Democrats to flock to Elon Musk. She was basically laughing at Tesla as a company, saying it wouldn't be a good investment for the future. And people like that, who were kind of brain dead, didn't know much about green energy back then. A lot of people didn't. Green energy just kind of crept up this century real quickly, more during the Obama years. But Obama was someone who embraced Elon Musk, and that kind of added to Musk's popularity. He's a flip-flopper either way. He just wants to get in with government because he gets big subsidies from government. Like I said, that's how SpaceX got to be so big. But all these gurus, man, they've been around, haven't they, ever since big media's been around. But you got to be real careful because their agenda isn't what it seems. It's not what they present. Their agenda, as much as they try to make you think they're there to save the world, is really to build their own profile and to build their own assets and to, incredible amounts. Trump's a guru too. He has his own stock. It's called DJT. And that stock is an amazing stock to study because it's rocketed up and down like a roller coaster. So you could have made a lot of money in it if you had bought low, but buy low and then sell high. But it's hard to say what it's going to do next, and a lot of people just end up selling after they buy it because it drops and drops and drops and drops. And then there will be certain occasions like this past week where this hit DJT stock went way up. Anyway, Trump's a guru, so he has his followers who actually think he can do no wrong, even though he's a proven shyster. He never really made that much wealth other than he inherited a lot of wealth from his dad, and who had the same business, hotels, and he's the guy who started the Trump brand in New York. And then Trump was also from a family of elites, that were in other parts of government and all kinds of other stuff. And the way Trump became a guru was just by being on TV a lot, because he had inherited so much money and he was high profile. They started asking him, well, hey, when are you going to run for president, or would you be interested in running? He got a contract from CBS TV to host Miss America, and that was huge. That brought him into people's living rooms and made him a household name. After that, NBC made him a bigger household name with his Apprentice show. You know, millions of people watched this show, and it was a top show for a while. Although the audience dwindled down season after season, it just burned out because he's such a over the top actor. A lot of people fall for it because they're brainwashed by TV, because of the decades of indoctrination, people getting used to it being in their living room. Oh yeah, this is lots of choices that I get to choose, even though it's just 6 companies that you're choosing from, but spread out over hundreds of channels and just hundreds of, maybe thousands of shows. But they're all controlled by just a short list of big entities. So these gurus, these freaking political gurus, Wall Street gurus, they're able to attract followings like rock stars did last century. Last century, it wasn't so much that way. It wasn't until Steve Jobs became a guru that people started following CEOs a lot. Okay, so now everything's changed, and you got Elon Musk, who's kind of a hippie, not really, but pretends to be hip. That's his goal as a poser, to win the crowd that is kind of either progressive or say maybe they're a Republican but not so super old world conservative. Maybe they are a fan of the stock market or whatever, and Tesla has been a good stock at times. Not this past week, of course. But keep in mind, a year ago, it was around $300 a share, or was approaching it, and now it's closer to $200 a share. So, and it topped out back in history at $400 a share. So this idea that Tesla's someday going to be worth $10,000 or something, and all these Bitcoin posers who treat Bitcoin like it's a guru, and there's Bitcoin gurus, they say it's going to 1 million. Right now it's stuck around 65 to 70,000, kind of near its all-time high, but it's been there all year, and gold has kicked its ass as far as a better investment. And so Elon Musk has been a big backer of Bitcoin at times. He's been in and out of it like a flip-flopper, depending on how it's reacted in the market. He helped one of these things, Dogecoin, skyrocket up to some incredible amount, and then it fell right back down after that. And that's the same story as Roaring Kitty, another cult leader in the stock market who has misled lots of people, caused them to lose lots of money. And that's the real reason I'm telling you all of this, is that these gurus sometimes can let society down, even investors who think they know what they're doing. Elon Musk used to be very good, like Steve Jobs, at getting boom, boom, like doing an event, and then the stock would punch up. Okay, it hasn't been like that the past couple years. Each of his events have flopped. Sometimes he'll come out on the news and say something like, earlier in the year, he warned that China, unless we put higher tariffs on China, that they're going to destroy the American auto industry. They're just going to take over the world as far as the number one auto makers. And then the Tesla stock tanked right after that. So Elon didn't have to say that. It should have been a lesson learned not to go with some made-up news story just to create hysteria. His robo-taxi event, it just was trying to be too futuristic and trying to take too much credit for a game-changing day in in history, and trying to say that he's going to sell robots in 3 years, 4 years, for $20,000 a robot. Who in the hell can afford that for something that still doesn't exist yet? And he used people to pretend like they were robots at his event. So he's trying to make it sound like he's the future of everything, and then the whole amazing AI scam, which is happening now, is all about him. But really, AI is another one of these super trends that's overhyped, like Bitcoin. There hasn't been that much new technology in the past decade. In fact, it's been kind of boring. But in order to offset that and trick investors and society that everything's changing fast, they have to talk about AI a lot. And AI, the chatbot stuff and all that garbage, has not been that effective yet. It's actually hurt businesses because there's lots of questions about AI, about legal ramifications, how it is infringing on copyrights, and how it, is invading privacy and things of that nature. Is it accurate information? And a lot of times it's not, when it's just trying to be this machine learning thing that's drawing data from multiple sources. You have to control the endpoints. In other words, the data has to be reviewed by humans to verify that it's good data. Otherwise, you get lots of bad data in a system, and then AI doesn't work right. It's just a bunch of junk. So far, that's all it's been, but it's also been a lot of hype that has moved up stocks like NVIDIA, the game console maker. But the reason why NVIDIA has a legit argument that their stock is on fire this year, and it has been one of the hottest stocks, is because they're a hardware developer. They're actually making stuff that's real, okay, and they're making supercomputers. They're just stacking chips on top of each other. So what Jensen Huang has done, he's the cult leader of NVIDIA. He's probably stealing lots of thunder from Elon Musk, at least in the Wall Street world, not in the mainstream at all. But he's impressing a lot of investors because he's making supercomputers, and he's talking about market domination, and he's selling his stuff to lots of different vendors, partnering with companies, and he's got lots of corporate clients. The two biggest radio companies in America have each filed bankruptcy in the past 20 years. First, there was Clear Channel, which turned into iHeart. That's what happens after bankruptcy. They reorganize, change the name, and it's a new company. More money comes in from more loans. And Entercom, they tried to borrow lots of money in 2017 to buy CBS Radio, and at that time their stock was $15 a share. Then the pandemic hit in 2020. The stock just kept going down and down and down. Then it was it had a little bump after the election in 2020, but after that it fell from $7 a share to the pennies. And all along, like both CEOs of iHeart and Odyssey were trying to say that things are going to get bright in the future, and it just never happened. iHeart is near the pennies again. It had reorganized as like a $20 stock, then fell into the pennies. So what happens to gurus who turn out to be frauds? Well, we learned from Enron in 2000 that you could be one of the 10 biggest corporations in America, and the chairman could be friends with the president of the United States, which went on to be George W. Bush, and still be a big fraud. So what happened was Enron was posing as this innovative internet company that sold energy to different entities like states, and they were really bluffing on their income. They weren't making as much money as they said they were, and so they bluffed investors, and so their stock, it fell hard, like from double digits to pennies once the fraud was exposed. So a lot of people lost their money because they were doing business with themselves. They created all these phony entities and did business with them. They were just moving money around within their own system and pretending like they were doing business. So that was exposed as a big fraud. It turned out an executive who worked for that company named Christian Holmes was the father of a lady named Elizabeth Holmes, who eventually went to prison for corporate fraud because she posed as this innovator. She was CNBC and a bunch of magazines like Fortune and stuff had her on the cover, and she was being promoted as the next Steve Jobs. Okay, keep in mind that was a key buzzword all along since Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, the next Steve Jobs, after Steve Jobs died in 2011. And she was friends with President Clinton, and he was bluffed by her. So here's some of the big people she fooled. Rupert Murdoch, the head of, News Corp, which owned Fox News. And she defrauded Betsy DeVos, who was in Trump's cabinet, but she was a wealthy whatever. But she invested money in Theranos, this phony company that said it had this new innovative device, blood testing device, that could determine all kinds of human illnesses just from one blood sample. And it was all a lie, all a big hoax, and so she was found to be a big fraud in court. She even defrauded Walgreens. They fell for her crap. It's still amazing that Bill Clinton fell for her crap and had her on tour with him to help promote his Clinton Foundation. She's in prison now. She got, I forget, 11 years or something like that. Then there was Sam Bankman-Fried, the crypto clown who made it on the covers of Fortune and other big financial magazines, and he was kind of touted as this guy who was raising all kinds of money, and he did it for both political parties, and he's in prison now. He was directly defrauding his customers of this crypto exchange by using their money to invest in this other stuff, and you're not allowed to do that unless you're disclosing that up front. So he's in prison now. And another guy in prison is an electric vehicle maker named Trevor Milton, the CEO of Nikola.
It was a truck running on revolutionary hydrogen technology. It could save both money and the environment. This truck, called the Nikola One, was going to disrupt the $1 trillion trucking industry and would go on to make Trevor a multi-billionaire. Bosch, General Motors, and other big names all wanted to work with Trevor and his revolutionary company that would later be worth $34 billion. The only problem was that none of this was real. The vehicle behind him was simply a shell that couldn't even drive itself, and none of the technology that he talked about even existed. But this would only be the beginning of the lies. So how was everyone fooled? And how could a man look so confident about his achievements while knowing that none of what he was saying was real?
So there you have it. That's pretty much my presentation today about gurus. I would definitely be skeptical of all of them. I mean, even Steve Jobs, I'm skeptical that he could do anything he wanted to do. But he was cool because he was honest about it. I've seen a lot of videos of him where he was very honest about his limitations and the limitations of tech companies. But he was also very charismatic and an interesting visionary in how he wanted people to embrace technology to empower themselves and use it as an education tool. So people need to think for themselves and be critical thinkers, especially of what they see on TV, especially if it has something to do with the stock market. If it means investing your money in something, you better do research on your own and think for yourself like a critical thinker, not some third grader the way TV tries to program you to either love or hate something when there's plenty in between to do actual intellectual analysis by weighing the pros and cons.